Hey, mini war gamers. All right. I've been kind of lost in thought thinking about why it is that I have bought so many of these little tiny fighty men, futuristic, fantastical miniatures. And like, where are we getting value, very subjectively and personal, in our miniature collection? And here, this guy, this Hydra, is having kind of a resurgence in popularity, thanks in part to Stranger Things. But it's actually a very special miniature to me, and I just reacquired it, and it kind of got me thinking, like, okay, how would I categorize my value gain from something like these things? And I thought up these basic categories, so they're probably a little crude and imperfect, but go with me here. So we got sculpt, which is just like, man, the thing is the aesthetics, the way it looks, I love it. I just need it on my shelf. The game I can play with it is really great and attractive. I want to play with my friends at my hobby store, with my family, whatever. Maybe it's part of an IP setting that really does something for me. I want to own part of that IP, think about it, immerse myself in it, tell stories with it. IP, I think, also for the historical gamers, you could think of this as an interesting historical time period as well. Maybe the miniature is getting harder to find. Maybe it has some collectability. Maybe there, I put rarity here. Maybe there weren't a ton of them made. That could also have value. And then as things get out of print and go on in life, maybe there's some nostalgic pull for this thing later on, or maybe it's new in it, but evokes these older nostalgic feels. And then just for completeness, material value, like ain't nobody stockpiling pewter miniatures to melt them down into ingots and resell the pewter on materials market. But just for a little blip there, because I do think at least for me, metal miniatures hold a little bit more value. So how do we think about this guy? This is this Hydra from Julie Guthrie, Raoul Partha in 1982. I'm pretty sure I acquired mine in 1988 by spending my own allowance money to get this rascal, and I just reacquired him, purchasing him off eBay again. So what does it look like? Well, for me, the pie graph shakes out like this, and you see this huge nostalgic pull, right? One of the very first miniatures I ever bought myself, of course. I also love the way this thing looks. At scale, it's a little bit too small for really 15 millimeter gaming. This guy is great. But no real IP or game attached to it for me. Now, you could say Dungeons and Dragons and Stranger Things. Well, that may be for someone else who associates this miniature with that. But for me, this was actually just one I bought and put next to, like, they would sell these like pewter wizards holding crystals and things like this. It was very like Anne McCaffrey, what is that? Those dragon books kind of feel. Anyhow, yeah, this is how this breaks. And rarity a little bit here, but it was recast in reproduced for Mage Knight. I think there are actually two variations, this one and one holding weapons. And then you can also find STLs of it online. But in the secondhand market right now, you can get the older metal one for about $20. You can get one of the plasticky figures for around 10. You can also buy it new off Ironwind Metal's site for around 20 something, and then another 20 something in shipping. So yeah, that's that guy. And how would this change though, this pie chart? And this is where it gets fascinating. And as I worked through these miniatures, I have got a set to run through all the way up to 3D printing stuff. And the 3D printing stuff, I think, does something interesting. Maybe you can figure out what it is. But here, if we run the same exercise for the Eldar Dreadnought, aka a Wraith Lord by Jess Goodwin. Actually, I don't know if that's a sculptor, but he's the man, the creator of most of the classic Eldar look that is just so timeless, right? What would this be? And for me, it shakes out like this. I do have a big nostalgic pull for this. It's my old school, old hammer Eldar army. But since I like to play or would I dream about playing Old Hammer again, the game value and the IP value are really high for me here. There's also a bit of a collectability appeal as well. So I think that might make sense. Well, what happens if we grab something? Oh yeah, it's $20 or $30 on the secondhand market right now, and they're getting harder to find. What happens if we put down Lhykhis, the warp spider exarch that we never had back in the day? What would that do for my totally subjective value breakdown? And for me, it's all about the sculpt and less about the game, and a good chunk from the IP still, right? So, but since I don't play modern 40K, like that game drops down to next to nothing, right? I could put it at 0, but I guess since I had it, I mean, like, oh, I could play, maybe I could use him to put next to my old goofy looking warp spiders. I don't know. It probably looks tragic side by side, but yeah, get him for about $48 on pre-order right now, I think. Yeah. What about a good old Thunderbolt? Heavily produced, Siocast, what's it do? Yeah, it's mostly becomes game value for me here because I like Alpha Strike. I don't particularly gravitate towards the Thunderbolt sculpt either. Other people may be bigger fans of this one. $10 to $20 if you're buying it just itself off eBay. Look at that delicious mold line right down the right-hand leg there at the top. Gross. Yeah. And here we come to kind of the main event. So thinking about the Hydra from Julie Guthrie all the way to something like this Trench Pilgrim here by Mike Francine. And so, you know, this is an STL file that you can buy that you have to print out in resin, or I suppose FDM if you've, actually it'll probably print out pretty good on a modern FDM printer, right? What happens to our value graph? Well, for me, it does this, right? There's no nostalgia, there's no real rarity, and there's definitely not a material value. So everything goes towards game and IP, and then do I like the sculpt enough to actually own it, right? So, and again, pie chart could be different for you, will be different for you, but that's what that looks like. And, you know, if I put all those up side by side, you can see like all the way back to my Memberries nostalgia trip with the Hydra, all the way forward to just game and IP value pretty much from the Trench Crusade miniature. And really, I think that is the trend as we move down to more modern miniature wargaming and 3D printing, right? And, you know, it's shifting our value. It drops, 3D printing drops our collectability next to nothing. The sculpts still need to be appealing, but that's that emphasis towards game and IP, right? Just because we can produce a gazillion of these guys. So they themselves are less valuable to us, right? And but you know, are there still highly collectible minis being made? If you're out there in the mini wargaming world, you know that there are. Here, I'll just flash one on the screen that I really like. This is called The Stork. It's part of the Herons group by Anna Polenchak. I tried Anna. And I think Andrew May is kind of a counterpart in crime here. Part of Meridian Miniatures helps cast these out for Anna, do the production after she's got her green prototypes and whatnot. But I love she does a Gardens of Hecate, very kind of John Blanche, old school vibe here. And these would be great for me for things like Silver Bayonet, A War Transformed, things like that. So very interesting, right? A real high aesthetic pull, a little bit of game pull, and I think a very high degree of collectability. Why? Because these are much more limited run in their castings. They can keep casting these, but I don't think the demand is going to be so high that there's going to be a gazillion of these out there, right? You grab your plastic Space Marine compared to this guy, and the amount of 25mm bases that each are taking up out in physical space on Earth is just staggeringly different. So yeah, there's a high degree of collectability here. And that, you know, plays into how these things are made. We have the artisanal castings, the factory mass-produced stuff with a little bit of hybrid thrown in where we have plastics, but also STLs or the company will print you the figure, or you could do on-demand printing, or you can just get the STL and print it at home, right? And this is really the trend that I've talked about earlier this year. I just keep coming back to it, right? The physical to digital movement that we're having right now. And what that's really doing, is, I think, is moving from this more collectible space more to a purely gaming space, right? And I'm not saying any of this is good, bad, whatever. I mean, this is just kind of like what is happening. And I don't mean anything derogatory by quote unquote game pieces, right? I'm not trying to take a swing at Trench Crusade or any 3D printing as well. I put a category there, slop, which is kind of a little bit, maybe that is a little bit of a swing. There just seems to be tons and tons of STLs out there for all sorts of things. Like, you want a proxy Space Marine figure? Man, you live in the golden age then, because there are probably, I'd say there's like 200 plus of them out there for you to choose from, right? And proxy miniatures is a very big thing out there. So to me, to get me to buy something for an STL, I realized it had to be attached to a game and IP that I really loved. And in fact, more of an official game piece as well, too. This is another one. I just put the kind of the value categories up there. This is not an actual trend, but well, a little bit of a trend line. If you're early in the hobby, if you're starting out, I think sculpt and then game are going to be what pulls you, and then later on, you might have some nostalgic feelings and be a little bit more collector-y or choosier about what goes on your shelves, right? I think this is also playing into, obviously, I'm a graybeard, so this is where I'm getting my value skews this way as well. But like I said, like, these things here, my Epic Warpath army, which could be all printed in my garage, but I have a mix of production plastics and printed resin pieces here. So I just got them all primed up. Like, why do I like these? Why do I value these enough to put on my shelves and have? Well, it's the game and it's the IP. These are official miniatures from Mantic, right? These are not agnostic, just STLs out there by a creator, which are plenty cool, and you may like them enough in their look and then how they can be used to own them, right? Hopefully that was kind of an interesting thought exercise. Maybe you totally disagree with me. You can throw fire at me in the comments below, or maybe you agree with kind of how I'm breaking things out. And maybe you can do this with some of your miniatures. So what do you see? What do you find? What are you valuing these days? All right, gang. I hope you have a good one, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.